Kara Nazari. I'm the Managing Director of AmCham Dubai, and it gives me a great pleasure to be a little bit late. I'm sorry for that, but to introduce our technology partner, Cisco, and to thank them not only for this webinar and the expertise they're going to share with us here, but for their ongoing support of our webinars. They stepped in immediately, and it enables us to continue to offer our members weekly webinars and enables our committees to continue the important work that they're doing. I'd like to thank the business councils who have partnered on this webinar, with being the Australian, the Canadian, the Netherlands, South African, and the Indian Business Professional Council in Ras Al Khaimah. That just goes to show you how important the topic is. And of course, our AmCham GCC partners from across the GCC, being Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Qatar, and Oman. So thank you all for joining us this morning. We really appreciate that. Without really much further ado, I want to just delve right into getting you an introduction to both of our speakers, because they bring a wealth of expertise, and I will introduce them both, and then they will hand off to each other within the presentation. So Shukri Eid is going to be our first speaker this morning, and he's the Managing Director of the Gulf region at Cisco Middle East. Excuse me. In his current role, Shukri heads Cisco's business and operations across Afghanistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, UAE, and Yemen, with a key focus on digitalization and the Internet of Things. Shukri is helping drive Cisco's digital agenda, competitive positioning, and business strategy across the markets he oversees. He's a Cisco veteran with over 13 years. Shukri's responsibilities include driving Cisco's strategy across his markets to ensure execution on business objectives, in addition to forging close relationships with governments, customers, channel ecosystem partners. He's valued for building results-oriented and enthusiastic teams, and as a hands-on client and partner executive, evidenced clearly by his need to be here this morning. So Shukri, we really appreciate you making time to be here this morning. Shukri established himself as a thought leader and agent of change in a fast-evolving dynamic markets, and is known for his deliberate strategic approach to the complex challenges he's often faced with, his authenticity, and his people management skills. Shukri will be followed by Mahmoud Rabi, who's the cybersecurity lead for the UAE Enterprise Public Sector. Mahmoud is a cybersecurity specialist working for Cisco Systems. He has over 15 years experience in cybersecurity domain, with focus on advanced threats, prevention, and next-generation security solutions. Mahmoud has worked for several cybersecurity-focused vendors across the Middle East and Africa. Currently, Mahmoud is leading Cisco security business for UAE Enterprise and Public Sector. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us this morning, for sharing your expertise, and we look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Shukri.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here with you all, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I wish, of course, that I was speaking to you in different and probably better circumstances, but as we go through the few minutes with the thoughts I'm going to share with you, we are going to see how there's really a positive and like a silver lining in any situation we are facing. To put it mild, and you've heard this tagline a lot before, we are definitely at unprecedented times, whether in terms of countries in this time of globalization physically closing their borders and movement of people and goods, to the whole workforce around the whole world remarkably have been sent home to try and continue and work from there and be productive, to our logistics and supply chain channels that we've built decades in building are all being abruptly disrupted, to even our clothes being closed. It's almost like the whole world has said, let's switch to another channel and hope that I'll see you on the other side to each other. I think what I want to highlight is some of the implications to business and what that means for Cisco, for our customers, both tactically and strategically. And from an implications point of view, tactically, I think the question that is present on everyone's mind, how do I keep my business running? And that means basically, what does it mean for my remote workforce? And depending on that industry, that is definitely the most valuable asset that I have within my organization. How do I make those people continue to be productive? But the more underlying question is, I think businesses are going to already started asking themselves, thinking more about how dependent is my business really on physical assets and workforce that are very sensitive to their location. And what that brings then to the forefront about how am I going to use technology or whatever means that are available to me to virtualize those resources so I can continue working and continue being productive. Whether it's human resources, and that's going to get us into the whole concept of remote working in general, but also my physical assets, which either are going to open up acceleration to things related to production facilities and how can I also virtualize those production facilities. And that's what actually gave birth, and I expect increased adoption to concepts like 3D printing and so on. So more production at the point of consumption. Or physical assets that we know today are partially related to technological capabilities, technology, software applications, data, and that's what's going also to drive increased adoption to the virtualized technology and the virtual world, which is more related to cloud. And whether you are more interested in the, in the technological capabilities like your compute power, your storage, your data, your applications, and so on, or it's the more production facilities, I think this is where we start talking about how am I going to secure my IP as it goes through this unconventional supply chain or production chain, and how am I going to secure my information if I'm talking more about my workforce interacting remotely, but also my applications and my data and the data of my customers being on cloud. How am I going to secure my compute power, my storage, my other underlying technological capabilities that are increasingly and similarly important to the physical assets are getting also very, very critical to my business. So, and I think that's what probably is where most of the wavelength of people's minds are at the moment. How am I going to continue to work? How do I make sure that my productivity of the workforce is not disrupted? How do I continue to work remotely? And how can I do that in a secure manner? But I think medium to long term, there is, eyes are going to go more towards something else, which is the strategic question that begs itself now as we observe what has happened very, very abruptly, relatively, over the past couple of months, which is confronts us with the exposure and gaps and weaknesses that in our business continuity, but also gaps or weaknesses or flaws in our infrastructure resilience, and that the resilience of our services that we offer. And that's being really challenged at all levels, from an individual level when I think of my role as in a household, or if you talk about a business or a larger community, or even at a country and at a state level of I'm being confronted by, as I said, gaps or issues in my business continuity as a country or as an organization or as a family, as well as weaknesses that became apparent to the resilience of my infrastructure and my services. Really my continuity capability. And if you think about examples, I think it shows how vulnerable our economic activities and our economic system has been, our education system, and definitely our healthcare system at the moment, versus some other things that saw less disruption, like our financial system, which has been over the past several decades far more virtual in terms of its operation. I'm not talking about the overall economy, but the financial system functionality itself, as well as some aspects of our national infrastructure, which has been both, secure both at the physical and at the cyber level. Vulnerability, in particular in our healthcare system, demonstrated how dependent we are first on a very limited set of physical assets and equipments that we need in the healthcare provision process, but also on the most valuable resources being the healthcare providers themselves, the workers, and how our ability to make use of them is also very linked and very dependent on their physical location, just to name one limitation. I think this confronting those questions is going then to, I believe, is going to trigger the next wave of investment. We saw an immediate almost spur of investment, which is more driven tactically in the context of emergency response and response to this crisis. But I think there's another wave, probably more sober in the sense that is going to be driven with longer term, more sober motivations, which is trying to drive the questions around the business continuity, about the vulnerability, about resilience and so on, and some of those systems that I've given examples for. I think core to each of those questions is going to see how every nation is going to look at and perceive the security or the ability or the resilience to continue the business and production in circumstances and situations like these as part of their own national security. So I think this is where we are going to cross to a place where the security of and the continuity of our business becomes part of our national security increasingly. And especially with the sober effect about many aspects of the world we are living in now are going to become the new norm. We are not going to write off all the ways that we've changed in the past couple of months, and that is admittedly going to depend probably on, partially at least, on how long this transition period or that we are in, to the extent that it stops being a transition period and becomes actually more of the new norm. I think for Cisco, again, if I want to address very quickly our position and our response, both tactically and strategically, before I hand over to Mahmoud. On one hand, I think on the tactical side, Cisco responded by allocating $225 million package assistance, which is both in cash and products, to many organizations or governments around the world, namely the United Nations, WHO, and other organizations that are actually involved directly in response to this crisis. On the commercial level, we've announced globally free WebEx licenses, which is platform that we are using today for our remote work, our video conferencing, and the wider set of collaboration technology that caters for a very wide spectrum of interaction and collaboration among working teams. But I think, and that, by the way, has given the chance for 2.2 million people since the beginning of the crisis to join this platform. And we have very detailed numbers about how many billion minutes of meetings that we have enabled and facilitated over the past couple of months. Some of them are folds of the maximum peaks that we have seen ever since the launch of that platform. And by doing this, I think not only are we helping to virtualize resources, but I think many businesses and customers started seeing other silver lining, other consequences to virtualizing those resources, those skills, which is really going to be things like improving even the utilization of those resources, because with those assets not being virtualized and more attached to a physical space, your ability to connect to them and use them in special emerging context was very challenging because of the physical location limitation. While if I can actually reach different people with different skills, different languages, different backgrounds based on the context, based on any emerging situation, not only is that going to help me access them, it's also going with time to increase and improve the utilization of those resources over time. And that's globally. I think locally, if I want to use some of examples tactically, we've worked with Medcare, which is a renowned healthcare provider here in the UAE, in launching their telehealth platform in record time. It was a proof of concept that we have been developing with them for the past a couple of months, and we were expecting probably months in the future until we are able to pilot this or to go on trial. And this situation has immediately meant that we need to go within 2 weeks instead of 6 months to launch it out for use. We have taken 1,000 employees from DHA to work from home over the past few weeks, and more are coming. We are working with the Ministry of Education on virtual clinics as well, and so on. So there has been a spur of innovation and creative use cases that are coming out. And I think one important aspect which we're talking about today is related to security, is that if we want to really adopt and integrate this way of working within our larger system of workforce, then we need to start dealing with those exchanges and those work as intellectual property. From how do we build it originally with a secure foundation at enterprise level? Because here is the new reality. The place I'm talking to you from at the moment has just become part of Cisco Enterprise Network. It is a workplace for Cisco. Therefore, how are you going to protect that platform, that infrastructure that you have as an organization or as a government organization, as a country, if you know that now this has spread into many dining tables, kitchen tables, home offices, and other places that just became part of your enterprise, part of your workforce, that needs access to the same level of applications, capabilities, information that people just a few weeks ago needed access from your what you consider to be a fortified environment that you built around your IT. And now this has been spread in a completely different landscape. And not only do they need access to this information, they actually also are going to exchange a lot of your intellectual property, making themselves and their work environment, which is now their life environment, their living environment, becoming part of your enterprise infrastructure. But also, how do we enable that in a way that we can protect users' privacy? Because I still have this privacy being still at home. And in that situation, that's the sort of responsibility that Cisco accepts, considering that we are coming from this enterprise catered background rather than only an end user background. So we take user privacy, but importantly, we take the enterprise security on solid foundation very seriously. We never rent or sell your data. Because not only do we look at this as you as an end user using this form of a social networking, but more of an enterprise-grade collaboration platform. And how can we, more importantly, be open and transparent about any emerging vulnerabilities, which sometimes are unavoidable, but it's more about how are you going to respond to those events. Again, as from one enterprise to the other, as an enterprise, how can you be quickly open? How can you deal with that very quickly, which is something that is so much as Cisco is within our DNA, because we are used to securing and protecting critical national infrastructure. I think in terms of strategically, and that all goes within the tactical response, but from a strategic point of view, what has been top of mind for me is that I've been with Cisco for now close to 14 years, and there is something that each Cisco employee holds very close to his or her heart, which is Cisco's vision about changing the way we live, work, learn, and play. That has always been our vision. And I can't help think every day how the special circumstances we are going through at the moment is just giving us a floor to, at a completely different, magnitude, think about really how are we going to get our customers and the countries we operate in to change the way they live, work, learn, and play, probably forever. And one tool that we use for this is called Country Digital Acceleration, which has always been a program. We are lucky to have it here in UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, a hybrid program office in Bahrain and many other countries around the region, is actually about usually accelerating digital transformation of countries. And I think there is since the crisis has started, we've also devised almost like an offshoot program with the funding behind it to tell those top officials and their governments, I'm going to fund a new host of proof of concepts of how are you going to use technology in so many different ways within your governments and within your organization to better respond, to build capabilities that can help you better respond to this emerging crisis, but any emerging one in the future. And I think at the heart of whatever is feasible as the new norm is what we can do now safely and securely. So again, that point of doing whatever we can do, build new capabilities safely and securely is going to be very important element to determine what can be new out there that can continue to be the norm, the new norm forever. And how can we build this to become not only a necessary capability that we can continue our work safely and securely, but also we use it as a fundamental advantage that I think is going to start differentiating communities, going to differentiate some businesses over each other, and definitely going to differentiate some countries over each other, and they're also defining their competitiveness really in the market and in life in general. And I think that's the responsibility we see, that's the role we see out for ourselves, that we choose for ourselves at Cisco, which is a really interesting time to be in now, because not only do we see how security has always been appreciated, but also sometimes used as an excuse for not moving quickly and transforming and disrupting ourselves and transforming the way we do work, but now became almost like we have no choice. We have to disrupt ourselves and transform the way we are going to work. So let's go and solve for some of those safety and security solutions, because the world is going to become much better and much brighter once we actually solve for those issues and immediately jump into the new world, the new way of doing things. With that, I'll pause here. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'll pass it to Mahmoud Rabi, and I think we're going to take questions more towards the end, if I understand correctly. So off to you, Mahmoud.
That's correct. Just as a reminder, while we're in the process of switching over and getting the screen ready, you can submit your questions online. So you can type them in, and then they'll have them for consideration and have answers for you when we take Q&A at the end.
All right, thank you very much. And thanks, Shukri, for the great introduction that shed some light on the current situation. So the topic of the day for this webinar is going to be securing our workforce, especially in the rise of a new workplace. So we've seen that the current situation has impacted the way we work in several ways, especially around the workforce beyond the network security perimeters. Think about traditional security perimeters, that's firewalls, proxies. So we're no longer protected behind those shields. Having said that, organizations have no other choice except embracing the current situation and adapt into it, right? So in today's webinar, we're going to walk through several topics. We're going to talk about what has changed and how the new workplace / the workforce environment challenges and how we can actually tackle them. So we're going to also see how cybersecurity looked before the COVID-19 outbreak and how it is today during the COVID-19 outbreak. Also, we see the threat actors' motivation, that they're highly motivated than ever. Also, we're going to walk through some attack examples, and then we show you how Cisco can help organizations in this difficult situation. And last but not least, we're going to walk through some cybersecurity advices that organizations might need to consider. So as we all know, and as we all are working from home today probably, we connect probably through the corporate VPN, which is supposed to secure us. But sometimes we may not tend to connect through that particular VPN tunnel where data may not be encrypted. Also, we can access internet directly due to different reasons. Some challenges are encountered in this situation, which is related to the sudden rise of the remote workers, where organizations did not have the right strategy in place to accommodate the sudden rise of that number of workforce working remotely. And also, you know, we had a lack of tools and experience dealing in situations. As an example, if one of the protected endpoints is being compromised, the incident response process may not be effective, or sometimes can be extremely difficult to go and contain and remedy it. And also, we see a shortage of laptops and devices, and this pushes users or workforce members to use non-corporate devices in order to maintain the business continuity. Also, we see that organizations have got limited bandwidth access, which will basically force the users to sometimes connect directly to the internet. Now, before the COVID-19, we can see that most of organizations have got, defined work environment and strategy in place that offers controls and security across workload, workforce, and workplaces. Remote workforce used to be the minority, and they knew how to use internet and browse safely. And also, from an incident response point of view, responding to breaches was swift and prompt, because the right tools were installed at the endpoints, and if an infection takes place, leveraging those tools would be easily. And also, security parameters were known to be proxies and firewalls and secure internet gateways. So pretty much everything was in control and secure and safe. However, in the current situation, our workplace is becoming borderless. Our employees are scattered across their homes, and as we mentioned, that they probably may not be using the corporate assets as devices. And there is no strategy in that perspective that's in place that helps organizations dealing with incidents related to cybersecurity. And also, we see the workforce is working remotely. So here we talk about all workforce as opposed to the previous model when you had the minority of the workforce that was working remotely. Incident response process, as we mentioned, is becoming extremely difficult due to the lack of tools and undefined process. And also, the parameter is becoming the user. It's no longer the firewall or the proxy or a secure internet gateway. So how about the threat actors? Where do they stand in such situation? Are they trying to leverage the current situation, or they have difficulties going after the low-hanging fruit? Actually, we see a significant rise in the cyber threats today. The attempts that attackers are using today is unprecedented, and that's due to different reasons. So when users use their personal devices, most likely it would carry vulnerabilities associated with the operating systems and applications. And that increases the number of vulnerabilities that threat actors need to go after. And also, we see that a weaker security posture because those devices are basically no longer have the right security controls in place. And that has given an unprecedented opportunities for threat actors that they need to go after. So we see that on the other side, we see that people have got tendency for learning more about crisis increasing risk, and that's basically our nature. Let's think about 6 months ago, and if I may ask you, and you don't need to answer now, 6 months ago, no one knew what a COVID-19 was, because back in time, it didn't really impact our life. But because there is a serious impact that's tangible for us, people tend to educate themselves about anything that would concern them, and that's our nature. Threat actors understand that psychology, and they align their techniques and campaigns to go after this particular psychology. So moving on, we see that the threat actors use different campaigns and techniques to interact with the workforce. So we have seen so many fake websites that carry weaponized content like malicious payloads. And basically, it will infect anyone that would land into these websites. Also, we've seen websites that promote sales related to aid kits and medical masks. And email is being used as a most vital tool to interact with everybody. If I send an email now, it lands right into your mobile devices at your fingertips. And you'll be motivated to open that email, especially when you look at the name, the first name and the last name without doing a proper check on the email ID. So threat actors are leveraging the COVID-19 themes by building legit-looking emails that are basically leveraging the current situation and interact with the people. Think about the example of you receiving an email from your HR giving you an advice on how you should work, or a new update related to the current situation. Or probably your kid's school sending you an email telling you new approach and new model of doing remote learning. So without thinking twice, you will be motivated to go and open those links. And most of the time, these links will be, of course, used for reconnaissance, so they understand your security posture, and also identify your weakness by identifying the vulnerabilities associated with your operating systems or applications. And the reason behind that, as we mentioned, so there are more remote workers than ever, less effective security, and malware is getting injected also into the people browsers, because corporates lack the right strategy in place that deals with the remote workforce working in remote workplaces. So the window of opportunity for threat actors is unprecedented, as we have seen in this slide. So let's go through some examples. So Cisco Talos is a security intelligence and research group. They're made to provide update about the latest threats seen out there in terms of intelligence. They identify campaigns launched globally, and also they provide update to all Cisco security products. So we have seen different blogs that Cisco Talos has actually posted related to the current situation, where we're seeing attackers are leveraging the COVID-19 themes by either building fake websites or sending emails that with people's psychology, which we discussed. Also, because we see every day 200 billion DNS queries, we have seen that there's so many domains being registered associated with the COVID-19 keyword, coronavirus keyword, and so on. So the rise of these domains is really increasing rapidly. And this indicates two things. Either there is a genuine business that needs to be conducted related to this area, Or we see threat actors are creating domains that will be used to serve their needs by launching campaigns, sending phishing emails. One interesting example about this particular campaign that threat actors are using is the slide that you see that reflects a coronavirus live update style map. So, every day I personally go and track the outbreak progress just to enrich my knowledge on what's going on. The same way that, there's so many people out there are motivated to do this. And we've seen that there are fake maps out there that include malicious content, where the users will be, without thinking, going and interacting with this map. So people will be interested on tracking the outbreak progress, but in a minute they interact with it, their browsers get injected with a Trojan that's called Azure Alt. So, and by the way, we're not seeing new techniques that threat actors are using. However, we see them adapting to the current situation by knowing the people's psychology and how they can launch legacy attacks through fake websites and phishing emails. So Cisco Umbrella is a technology that we use which monitors the global DNS queries. And referring to the previous slide, we have seen that domain was created on March 11th. Sorry, it was on February 4th. That was registered, and we started to see spike on March. So this tells that people are actually going after those heat maps and simply clicking on the links. And as you can see in the spike on the 13th of March, the number of clicks or interaction with that website reached nearly 16,000. Also, we have identified subdomains that were created by the same threat actors related to an email exchange that's called MX2 coronavirus. And of course, that will be used to send emails from that particular mail server. We've seen also phishing email attacks, and the current slide shows that a phishing email that tells whoever receives it to check the safety measures, and if it looks authentic, but if you do some sanity check on the email ID or the domain being used, or maybe you hover the cursor over the safety strategy .pdf, that will show you the link. So probably before opening that, you might do these sanity checks. Mobile devices have also been part of these global campaigns that threat actors are carrying. So there's an application that's called COVID Lock that's basically supported on the Android devices. It claims that users can track the spread of the outbreak, but in a minute it's installed, it starts recording anything that sees through the camera and also the microphone, as well as downloading the messages. So when a threat actor gets control over the device, they can also encrypt the data, and they would demand for a ransom that people have to pay. In other words, if you have valuable information on your device and where you didn't have a backup for, most likely you're going to go and pay the ransom to get your data back. So as an advice, you might need to use Google Play Store to download the authentic applications. So this moves us into how Cisco is helping organizations dealing with such challenges that we have mentioned. So we are actually helping organizations to keep up with the unlimited amount of devices, either corporate or personal devices being used for business, and giving offer for enterprises that they can leverage free security tools offered by Cisco that can help the workforce anywhere, anytime. So existing customers can actually enjoy more licenses. Also, non-Cisco customers can sign up freely for any of those security tools, which we'll mention in a minute. So the security tools offer a comprehensive secure work as a remote work experience. It varies from DNS security, multi-factor authentication, advanced malware protection, and also VPN. So the beauty of this technology is that, first of all, customers can use it for free, and the offer is valid till July 1st. 4 of these technologies work cohesively together to build a solution around the zero trust, which means it offers a continuous monitoring for the assets regardless to where they are. It monitors all DNS queries pointing to domains that are short in terms of life, i.e. domains that have been registered only last month or last week, or domains that were never seen before. Multi-factor authentication, it verifies the identity of the remote user using different flavor, either by something you have or something you are or something you own. So we use those combination even through VPN. So you connect to the VPN after authenticating with the multi-factor authentication. M4Endpoint offers an advanced malware protection that monitors all file activities, if they're moved, copied, executed, even the connections that leave the protected endpoints. And it works in conjunction with the multi-factor authentication. In other words, if your endpoint is infected or triggers any sort of indication of compromises, it will de-authenticate you automatically from the network. So security analysts in that perspective can have control, and they can revisit what was happening earlier. Of course, AnyConnect VPN is a leading technology that has been there for decades, and it helps you in protecting the data and maintains confidentiality and integrity. So with those being implemented, we make sure that our users, even when they're not connected through the VPN, they're still secure. So VPN, as we mentioned, offers the encryption aspects of the equation, while Cisco Umbrella monitors all DNS queries and can enforce actions based on predefined policies. And also we see Cisco Duo and M4Endpoint building in this domain a zero trust. And as we mentioned, if an indication of compromise is triggered, you can be automatically de-authenticated. So the slides are going to be shared with you, so you can sign up for free links across all the technologies, where you can leverage the offer for 90 days from a date you sign. So that's valid till July 1st. So last but not least, we're going to walk you through the advices for working remotely and securely. So employees today are becoming the weakest link, and they are becoming the corporate perimeter, and therefore raising their awareness is definitely crucial. So it's an area that you need to focus on. Why? Because they simply need to understand the consequences and risk associated with any blind click or attachment that they do, which will lead, as you say, lethally into consequences. So implementing security controls that go beyond VPN antivirus, and we've seen that so many corporates assume they are secure by implementing an antivirus for the endpoint. So with the sophistication of attacks we see in the wild, that antivirus are limited, and therefore you might need to consider different technologies that will help you to control your workforce remotely. Leveraging NIST SP 846, which is a framework that will guide you into how to implement the right process and procedures, and also building strategy for teleworking and remote access for your workforce. And also having a good incident response plan is definitely better than having a perfect one. And that will help you into responding to incidents in a timely manner, where you can bring business back to normal and maintain business continuity. We also see that the world is flooded with so many misinformation related to the COVID-19, which is called the infodemic. And threat actors are leveraging the situation by injecting more misleading messages into this flood, where they have a hope of people going and interacting with any of the messages that they send, which could be through a web page or a phishing email that they send. More information about these advices are available at Cisco Threat Intelligence Talos and given on the links below. With that being said, we hope that you stay safe and secure, and we hope that this has given you an idea on how on the challenges that you might be encountering today with the new workforce and with the new workplace having your workforce working. With that, we're open for questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Mahmoud and Shukri. Honestly, you said something which is going to ring very true to anyone who's been on the call. For me, as AmCham, having to relook very quickly at how we were serving our members. Obviously, we have somebody on the call who's not on mute, and we can't figure out how because we haven't quite gotten down all the nuances of working from home. So I appreciate everyone's patience on that. If you could just look at your and see if you are on mute. Everyone is showing on mute on our side, and we don't totally have the technical expertise to determine who's not. So it would be great if you could just have a look at your connection to the call and make sure that you are on mute. And then we can, if you have any Q&A, you can definitely send those through and we will address them as appropriate. I have a question that has come through from one of our folks up in Abu Dhabi. Zoom and GoToMeeting conference calls are common nowadays. What are the vulnerability to my devices and the firm in using those connective platforms? Do you want to address that, Mahmoud or Shukri?
I can talk on behalf of Cisco on WebEx, how secure it is and how we maintain encryption. You know, in a minute you get into a call. I've seen personally some blogs and reviews about people using other conferencing technologies where there have been identified vulnerabilities within the platform itself. And more details are out there. So if you simply type, you know, ex-vendor vulnerabilities related to conferencing, you might get more information.
Okay, great. We are really excited to have Cisco partner with us in this platform and provide the opportunity for us to do these webinars. I said this, the reason that we focused on this cybersecurity one is because, you know, even us as a little AmCham with no real corporate intelligence or security vulnerability, our stuff is stored in a cloud in Canada, to be honest. But one of the things that came up with us is that, you know, with us now working from home, how are we doing this? And then our IT outsourcing company said, oh, you need a VPN. And we were like, oh, we need a VPN. Oh, why? You know, and it is challenging to know. And as I said to my friends at Cisco, I'm always afraid when I hang up from cybersecurity conferences or walk out the door, because what we don't know is what we don't know, right? So it's always lessons learned. I was just trying to sort, there's a lot of comments about the typing, and I do once again apologize to you guys for that, but I was trying to make sure that we answered any questions that were there for folks. Oh, okay. So we have another question. How is the government approaching data compliance in this environment? For example, health data that shouldn't go cross-border but could have uncompliant issues unfold due to the fast-changing events.
Sure. So let me try to touch on this question, Kara. I think I think, without, of course, speaking on behalf of the government, but I think the government is definitely a very critical player at the moment. Not only, so all the changes that I've described, and some of which, or many of which, that are going to sustain, are going to actually put under pressure a lot of our existing fiscal policy, regulatory policies, and requirements, among many others. And I think one of them that we've seen very evident, for example, was with the regulation around voice over IP, if you think about it, and how very quickly I think the regulators in the UAE, among other countries, actually decided that it is in the national interest to even promote some of the existing capabilities that are secured so people can continue to work from home, because they saw that there is a far higher interest now in play than not. So let's allow it, at least for the time being, until we are able to assess our regulatory position more. So that has happened. I expect that to be on other aspects as well, because many of those, let's say, collaboration technologies or tools are also cloud provided services, meaning that those services themselves are actually provided through the cloud. Now, different tools and different vendors have different standards in terms of what is it that goes to the cloud, and what we call is usually management data only, so signaling data that you are required to be that you need to be able to manage the service or the tool, rather than take any data on the cloud, let's say in a video conference. You just need the data that is technically what we call the metadata that you need to run the tool. I think when it comes to health data in particular, going back more precisely to the question, I think the governments, generally speaking, have been quite strict about where the health data information is being, by the way, globally, and I think Mahmoud can probably comment on that. Globally, healthcare records are one of the most, if not the most targeted type of information globally. And therefore, governments in general has been quite strict about where they want that healthcare information to be provided. I haven't seen many cases where the requirement has changed, but as we push the healthcare sector into different ties of scalability, whether we have to be confronted with a dilemma like that, I actually haven't seen cases yet, but so far I know that the governments are actually quite strict about not letting healthcare record leave the country, generally speaking, as far as I'm concerned. Mahmoud, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, yes, since I interact with government entities, of course, earlier they were strict about any cloud data, any data that would leave into the cloud. But with the surge of and urgency of the current situation, they have opened up a bit, and they wanted to have a temporary solution to secure their workforce. And I believe moving forward, we are going to see a new shape of compliance and regulatory around, protecting the data. So they still might go into the cloud, because the world cannot tolerate having another wave of such a crisis. And it may not be related to diseases, but I think it's going to open the eye for everybody to anticipate any global crisis. And as I said, the world cannot really tolerate that anymore. So we strongly believe that the cloud is going to be highly embraced, but there will be policies and the regulations and compliance in place. Yeah, questions? And by the way, we should be able to share the slides after this session, so you might if you're a business owner or a decision maker, or you can influence in a cybersecurity space within your environment, you can actually share it with your employees, especially those that never had the experience to work from home. To look at the advices. And also you can leverage, as we mentioned, the free security offer that Cisco is giving for 90 days that will help you build instantly a zero trust model, with your workforce and the new workplace. And that will maintain a great level of security and visibility as well. And just one more point, raising the awareness in this situation is difficult, and it may not be simply using PowerPoint. We have a great tool which you can also sign up for that's called Security Awareness. You can sign up for 45 days, where you can launch some sort of phishing attack simulation and get a report on which employees have interacted with those simulated emails as emails. And then you can also provide 300 plus classes and contents to raise their awareness. So we can share that as well to make sure that your employees are aware of any consequences and the risk, and they stay protected.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight and for giving us thoughts in relation to people's questions. I would like to say that the AmCham Dubai is digitalization and innovation, looking specifically at data privacy as a discussion. So if you have an interest in that topic, please reach out to me, and I would welcome your participation in that discussion forward in a productive manner with the UAE government and the U.S. government. There you go.
And then we have one question. Would you like me to take that?
Sure.
So there's a question from Sarim Rafik, if I spelled the name correctly. The question is, in case your remote workers' devices are compromised, how Cisco solution helps to respond or to remediate to cyber incidents? Does Cisco empower security operations to access remote devices? That's the question. And the answer is definitely yes. So we have a technology that's called Advanced Malware Protection for Endpoint. It comprises of different engines, which are EDR, EPP, and exploit prevention. And it basically has got an incident response capability that's called Cisco Threat Response. And that Cisco Threat Response is available for free. You have the Advanced Malware Protection for endpoint. It records data for over than a year, so you can revisit what looked to be benign back in time if it led into malicious activities in a later stage. Of course, you can quarantine the endpoints. You can couple that with a Duo as a multi-factor authentication to build a zero trust. So only allowed endpoints that are authenticated explicitly are those that are allowed to get into the corporate. So to answer your question, yes, definitely. And the links we are going to share through the slides will guide you through the capabilities of the platform and how to sign up, and just use it to help you for the coming 90 days from the day you sign up.
That's fabulous, Mahmoud. We really are looking forward to that. I know that it's been integral to our success in offering these webinars. So be forewarned, folks, there's a small learning with it. But other than that, Cisco has been a great partner to us, and we thank you both. We thank you very much for making time to be here with us. Mahmoud, thank you for being with us this morning. On behalf of our board of directors and Sami Busaba, who was not able to log in and speak, so he has sent me an email saying, please make sure I thank you both profusely, and the insights you shared were very useful. So with that, please note, as everyone has noted, we will share the slides. They'll be available on our website, and you will receive them. If you've logged in, you'll receive them with the feedback form that you get. And I think that's it. Everybody, please stay safe. Thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.